Hello, my curious learners. I hope you all are doing well. I welcome you all on English with Chahar sir, and once again I'm here with you all to decode the literary terms and figure of speech, a comprehensive series. So today, friends, we are going to deal with another literary term, and that is elegy. So before going any further, I request you all to subscribe, share, and like my channel to spread the light of learning among your friends and the students. So without losing any time, let's get started. Today's lesson based on elegy. So friends, before I begin, I have a request for you all. Please take a screenshot of every slide. हर स्लाइड का आप स्क्रीनशॉट लेते रहें जिसको बाद में आप अपनी नोटबुक पर नोट कर सकते हैं and later it will help you to understand it better. So today we are going to deal with another literary term, and that is elegy. And elegy has also been very popular in the course of literary history, particularly English literature. This is again a part of personal poetry, that is subjective poetry, and the poets have used elegy to outpour or express their emotions over the loss of someone near and dear. So now let's see first the concept of elegy. An elegy is a poem of serious reflection. Friends, please pay attention to these words. These are the key words are often asked in your examination, especially one mourning the loss of someone who died. Mourning, beeping. Beeping at the time of death. So mourning means beeping. So elegy is all about mourning over the loss of someone who is very near and dear to the poet. Elegies are defined by their subject matter and don't have to follow any specific form in terms of meter, rhyme, or structure. This is the initial condition, but later some poets have been there in English literature who preferred a regular meter and stanza form as well while writing such kind of elegiac poems. Before elegies focus on emotional experience of the poet, they are generally written in first person. This is the point to be kept in your mind. It is written in first person. Mostly the poetry that is subjective. Okay, subjective means dealing with the personal life of the poet. So often written in first person. First person, I think you all know I or we. First person pronoun. Typically, elegies end on somewhat hopeful note. Okay, elegy actually begins with a very bleak atmosphere dark atmosphere, and dark mood, sad mood. But when we come to the end of the elegy, it always ends with a hopeful note, that is positivity. Poet reconciling him or herself to death, ultimately discovering some form of consolation. So the ultimate purpose of elegy is to seek consolation, okay, after the loss and after the death. The poetic form known as elegiac stanza, which has a specific meter rhyme scheme, is different from elegy. Elegiac stanza actually, when this became popular during the time transitional period when Thomas Gray composed a very popular poem you all know, Elegy written in a country churchyard. So from there, this term came to use elegiac stanza. 4 lines quatrain that I will tell you later. Now let's look at the history of elegy, how it began. For most of history, the term elegy did not have any special relationship to subject of grief or mortality. Okay, so today, as we know, elegy as an expression of grief, expression of sadness, sorrow, melancholy. But when we look back in the history, in the ancient time, we find that elegy did not have any relationship to the subject of grief and mortality. In ancient Greek and Latin verse, elegy was a poetic form that was defined by a particular metrical pattern called elegiac couplets. Okay, elegiac couplet, 2 lines. Alternating lines of dactylic hexameter and dactylic pentameter. Okay, iambic, we have already studied about iamb, and now this is dactyl, another meter. There was pentameter, here is hexameter. Hexameter, that means 6 levels per lines. Some of the most famous elegies in ancient Greek and Latin words were written by Catullus and Ovid. Ovid is a very popular ancient poet. Okay, below an excerpt of one of Ovid's many love elegies, so called because they employ elegiac couplet, and in translation the poem loses its original meter. Okay, so when we translate into English, then the meter is disturbed. So these are the translated lines of Ovid's: Heaven knows, dear maid, I love no other fair. In thee lives all my love, my heaven lies there. So now notice this is couplet, okay, 2 lines. So these were written in ancient time. Then we come to English literature. In English literature, elegy is not defined by its use of elegiac meter as described above. So that is, here elegiac meter has nothing to do with the English literature, or that is elegies written in English literature. Until the 16th century, the definition of elegy in English literature remained somewhat indeterminate. That is, nobody was clear about the definition of this genre, that is elegy. This term, and often was taken simply to mean a poem of serious reflection. Okay, this was the initial concept and initial information about elegy, and people would just say that elegy is a kind of poem that deal with serious reflection on the part of the poet who is writing. And when the poet gets serious, when he loses someone near and dear. During the 16th century, though the elegy came to be more specifically defined as a poem of grief and lamentation. So now this is the definition which we follow even today What elegy is all about? Elegy is all about the expression of grief, the expression of lamentation, and this expression is made by the poet who is writing this elegy. Okay, so this is all about in 16th century. Then we go ahead and we come to the 18th century, and 18th century is the golden period for elegy, particularly among English Romantic poets. Okay, and now see, after 16th, we have missed one century, that is 17th century, right? And 17th, I've already told you, the 17th century is called Neoclassical age. And neoclassical age does not have any room for subjective poetry. Okay, the people rarely wrote subjectively, they rarely expressed their emotions and feelings, and they all had to do only with intellectual uh, phenomena. Okay, so that was intellect, the age for intellects, and that's why we directly come to the romantic age. Valued the form for its personal and emotional qualities. So taken were the romantics with the form that they even reinvented the traditional elegiac stanza, defining it as a quatrain. Okay, four lines as I have just told you. Iambic pentameter, AB, that is the rhyme scheme. And Hammond's stanza actually. This is also called Hammond's stanza. Hammond used it for the first time. Hammond. Okay. So this is Hammond's stanza. And in this quatrain, that is four lines stanza, iambic pentameter is used. And this was used by Thomas Gray in his Elegy written a country churchyard. So that is during the 18th century, elegy flourished. Thomas Gray's famous 18th century poem Elegy written in a country churchyard is an example of this type of elegy, a form that despite being defined by elegiac stanzas does not have its own name. Okay, let me clear, friends, this is not kept in the category of elegy. Okay, proper elegy. Why? Because elegy actually makes the poet weep, mourn, and lament over the fate of universe. Okay, and here the poet weeps. Uh, Here the poet weeps over the fate of universe rather than weeping on over the death of his friend. So this is called uh, this is not the kind of elegy, regular elegy, okay, which always weeps or mourns over the death of someone near and dear. Rather, here Thomas Gray weeps over the fate of mankind or universe. So, anti-traditional elegy, we call it anti-traditional elegy. It is anti-traditional elegy, or rather, we call it elegiac poem. Here are two stanzas I have taken for you. Your rest is had upon the lap of earth, a youth to fortune and fame unknown. You know, we are all personifications. And this stanza is for the friend of the poet. Okay, so the poetism in the last part of the poem, the poet weeps and moans over the death of his friend. Otherwise, the rest of the poem seems to be speaking of the universe, speaking of the mankind, and that's why it is kept away from the regular category of elegies. So it's a very famous poem. It was published in 1751. Okay, this question was also asked in AP examination, assistant professor examination. And these are the popular stanzas, so please keep them in your mind. Pastoral elegy. Now, there comes another term, pastoral elegy. Pastoral, friends, you are familiar. Pastoral means any piece of literature that deals with the life of the rural people, shepherds and shepherdesses. That is called pastoral. If it is a song, then it becomes pastoral song. Lyric, then it becomes pastoral lyric. And here we are discussing elegy, so it's become pastoral elegy. And pastoral elegy has been very, very popular. Elegy is not a strictly defined form. There is one particular kind of elegy whose definition is clearer, and that is called pastoral elegy, which is typically about a deceased shepherd. Deceased means dead. Okay, dead shepherd. Pastoral elegy can be seen as an elegy written within the tradition of pastoral poetry, whose roots can be traced back to ancient Greek and Roman poetry about the rustic life. Rustic means rural lives of the rural dwelling poets. Actually, in the ancient time, in Greek and Rome, the poets used to live in village areas, rural areas, and they used to write their poems. And so those poems were categorized as pastoral poetry has been written throughout history from ancient times through today, and pastoral elegy is just one type of pastoral poetry. Here are some of the features that define pastoral elegy. So now I am just giving some features of this kind of elegy. The deceased subject of the poem is often a shepherd. Okay, so that is shepherd is always the main character of the poem, and who is no more in the world, who is uh, away from this world, echoing a tradition begun by the Roman poet Virgil. Now, this is very important fact. Who started this tradition? This tradition was started by Virgil, Roman poet Virgil, who was known for portraying himself and others as shepherds in his poems. First feature. It is common even in pastoral elegies written in English to include classical mythological figures, okay, like muses. Muses, knowledge of arts and poetry. There are total nine muses. So we often find the mentioning of muses in the course of the elegies which were composed in English literature. So this is another homage tribute to ancient roots of the form. These poems typically begin with an expression of poet's grief, move to contemplate death and mortality. This is the main subject of elegy. Friends, keep this in your mind. What is the main subject of elegies? Contemplation, death, and mortality. And with the poet coming to peace with that, okay, acknowledging it as integral to the immaculate beauty of nature. At last, the wisdom comes in the end part of the elegy when the poet is sure that death is inevitable and death is the reality of all the mortal things on this earth, and then the poet patches up with that, comes to peace with that, acknowledging its inevitable nature. And so, this is the last lesson and wisdom that we get out of an elegy. Now we come to some examples like John Milton, 17th century, Lycidas, a very popular and famous elegy, which an excerpt appears below. I have mentioned here some lines from this elegy, regarded as the greatest example of pastoral elegy in English literature. This passage, which comes from the end of the poem, embodies the elegiac tradition of turning to consolation after lamentation. Okay? First poet laments and then comes to consolation. Milton implies that drowned Lycidas has been used for his friend, okay, Edward King, who died in some shipwreck and will find new life in heaven. So now see, what does the poet say about Lycidas? Weep no more, woeful shepherds, weep no more. For Lycidas, your sorrow is not there. Okay, a beautiful example from this elegy, Lycidas. Wanderer. Okay, this is an old poem by an unknown author. So Tennyson's Lord Alfred Tennyson Victorian Age, we find one of the popular elegies in memoriam of, and the quotation or the lines which I have given you is very popular, and often they are asked in examinations like NET and SAT. Okay, I hold it true, whatever before. I feel it when I sorrow most. It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Okay, very popular lines. Wordsworth, sorry, Elegiac Stanzas, the full title of this poem is, and that was written by William Wordsworth, and title is Elegiac Stanzas, suggested by a picture of Peel Castle in Storm, painted by Sir George Viewmont. Okay, so the poem was supposedly written in the wake of Wordsworth's brother's death. So that is always responsible for the creation of an elegy. And here who is responsible? William Wordsworth brothers that is responsible for the creation of this elegiac standards. Walt Whitman's American poet, when lilacs last in dooryard bloomed. Okay, Walt Whitman wrote this famous elegy after the death of Abraham Lincoln. This question is also asked in competition. Okay, to whom the elegy, when lilacs last in the dooryard bloomed, refers to or dedicated to, and that is Abraham Lincoln. Elegy does not have a particular meter or rhyme scheme. Okay, no meter, no rhyme scheme. And now these are the few lines I have taken from this elegy. How shall I warble myself for the dead one there I loved? How shall I deck my song for the large sweet soul that is gone? And what shall my perfume be for the grave of him I love? Okay. Now the question is, why do writers choose to write elegy? Unlike the classical traditions of epic poetry or medieval ballads, both of which use third person, okay, to focus on figures from popular mythology and folklore, elegies are deeply personal. This is the basic difference, okay? That typically make use of the first person to emphasize the private emotional experiences of a individual. So when the poet are overcharged with emotions, when they lose someone very close to their heart, like their friends, like their father, okay, then to express their emotions out, they use this term elegy. Okay, so let me tell you the four great elegy of English literature. Okay, one I have already told you, Milton's Lycidas. Then we come to the Romantic age, P.B. Shelley, Adonis. Then we come to the Victorian age, Lord Alfred Tennyson in Memoriam. And then another is from Matthew Arnold, Thyrsis. Okay, Thyrsis. So these are the four great elegies of English literature. Please keep the titles, okay, the name of the poets, the title of the elegy, and dedication to whom they are dedicated. Keep these information in your mind because one question will surely be based on these elegies. ये चार एलिजीज हैं इनमें से एक क्वेश्चन आपके पेपर में जरूर मिलेगा सो प्लीज इनके टाइटल्स इनके पोइट्स और किसकी डेथ पर ये लिखी गई थी वो और अगर हो सके पॉसिबल देन ऑल्सो ट्राई टू रिमेंबर द डेट ऑफ द ईयर्स ऑफ देयर पब्लिकेशन इनकी पब्लिकेशन ईयर्स सो फ्रेंड्स दिस इज ऑल अबाउट एलर्जी लेट मी once more shift the slides so that you may take the screenshots. The screenshots are going to be very useful for you. आप स्क्रीनशॉट साथ के साथ ले लीजिए और इनको फिर बाद में अपनी नोटबुक में नोट कर लीजिए तो मुझे लगता है कि आपको एलर्जी अब क्लियर हो चुकी होगी and it has been a very good experience with you. ऐसे ही थोड़ा थोड़ा करके gradually bit by bit you will complete many things, and these are going to be really an asset for you in your competition or exams and even in your regular studies. तो आप इनको एक एक करके पढ़ते जाइए एंड धीरे धीरे आपको ये सारी चीज़ें क्लियर हो जाएंगी. सो आज हम यहीं पर समाप्त करेंगे, लेकिन उससे पहले अगेन द सेम हैकनीड रिक्वेस्ट. सो प्लीज सब्सक्राइब and like and share this among your friends and those who are willing to uh, have some knowledge of English literature. So thank you. Take care of yourself. Study hard and be successful.